She was just a janitor until she outsmarted the CEO's entire tech team and stole his heart. They built the most advanced AI system in the world, but the one person who could save it was never meant to be in the room. Not a coder, not an engineer, just a girl with a mop, a secret past, and a reason to remember every line of code her father ever taught her. Welcome to Stories That See You, where every story finds its voice. If you enjoy this kind of deep emotional storytelling, don't forget to rate this story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us grow and tells us which stories speak to you the most. Thank you. The 37th floor of Helix. Dynamics headquarters shimmered beneath a lattice of blue-tinted skylights. Normally sterile and hushed, the command center now pulsed with flickering red emergency lights. Every screen, dozens of them, flashed the same unrelenting message. Critical failure, neural layer breach, core AI compromised. 20 engineers, 4 team leads, 2 AI architects. All failed. With less than a minute to global broadcast, the most advanced neural AI system in the country was collapsing, and no one knew why. Inside Helix Dynamics Command Center, red emergency. Lights pulsed. The primary diagnostics stuck in a recursive loop. Another engineer cursed under his breath. It's rejecting every input. It thinks we're the enemy. Keyboards clattered. Monitors flashed. Panic simmered. Then he walked in. Damien Hales, the architect of the empire. As he stepped into the room, every murmur died. All eyes turned to him. Without taking his gaze off the screen, Damien asked, "Status?" A lead engineer swallowed hard. "Core AI is interpreting every input as hostile. We're locked out." Diagnostics? Stuck. In a recursive loop. It's not just ignoring us, it thinks we're the threat. Damien's jaw tightened, but his voice didn't rise. "You've got 40 seconds. The room turned frantic, keyboards clacking, fingers flying, sweat beaded at temples. Someone cursed. Then a voice, firm and unfamiliar, cut through the static. "Stop!" Heads turned. A young woman stood at the threshold, dark blue apron, gloves, a janitor's badge clipped to her chest. Out of place, out of line. "What the hell?" A supervisor snapped, stepping toward her. But she didn't flinch. Her big hazel eyes were locked. On the terminal, scanning lines of cascading error code, like she was reading a familiar language. "Your system's misfiring its bias filter," she said, voice now calm. "It's reading unresolved null values as active threats. Every command you enter reinforces its isolation cascade." Stunned silence. Damien turned fully now, eyes narrowing. "And who exactly are you?" "Cassie Mendes. Maintenance." Another engineer barked. "This is a secure area." Cassie cut in, pointing at a blinking subroutine. "That line, bias filter overflow. You've got a legacy failover loop that's not syncing with the EOS architecture. If you reroute the AI through auxiliary memory and cold boot the logic gate, it'll stabilize." No one moved. Then Damien spoke. Soft, final. "Do it." Cassie walked forward with no hesitation. Her fingers danced across the keyboard with precision born from sleepless nights and hidden notebooks. She typed 5 lines, unplugged 1 cable, waited. The red screens flickered once, then turned blue. System stabilized. The engineers exhaled like they'd been holding their lungs underwater. The silence that followed was no longer panic, it was awe. The crowd cheered, applause thundered, but Damien didn't move. His eyes were on her, expression unreadable. He asked, "You have training?" Cassie stepped back. "I used to. Before." She turned on her heel and walked away, her work gloves still in her pocket. Damien watched her go. "Find out everything about her," he said to his assistant, and the screen cut to black. Cassie Mendes walked through the gleaming glass corridors of Helix Tower, every step pressing old regrets deeper into her spine. She didn't like this place. Too clean, too perfect. A monument to money and control, designed to erase people like her. She adjusted the cleaning bag on her shoulder. The strap bit into her collarbone. Her reflection slid across the polished walls. Dark hair knotted back, wide hazel eyes dulled by sleepless nights, faint freckles dusting her nose. She looked too young to be this tired, and too old to still feel invisible. The security escort didn't speak as they neared the executive elevator. Cassie kept her hands tucked inside her sleeves, hands that once wrote code like second nature, now raw from bleach and overtime. The uniform didn't itch because of the fabric. It itched because it wasn't hers. Nothing here was. Not the misspelled badge, not the marble walls her father once passed with pride, and certainly not tonight's assignment. Clean the CEO's private R&D lab. She'd tried to turn it down. Gave no reason. Just said she was unavailable. But hours were scarce. Rent was due. Her mother's meds weren't going to pay for themselves. So here she was, back in the same building where her father had died. They called it a workplace accident. She never believed that. Not once. And now, like some cosmic joke, she was walking into the lion's den again, armed with nothing but a mop and a lie stitched to her chest. The elevator opened into silence. No music, no ambient noise, just the stillness of wealth. The executive floor was dimly lit, intentional, as if shadows conferred more authority. A sharp scent of ozone and antiseptic hung in the air. Cassie stepped out, her boots soft against the polished floor. At the end of the hallway, frosted glass doors waited, labeled with a single steel plate, R&D access, restricted. She entered the temporary code and stepped inside. The lab hummed faintly. Screens blinked on standby. Holograms floated idle above quiet consoles. It felt more like a spaceship than a workspace. Her footsteps echoed as she crossed the room toward the cleaning cart someone had left ready. She was halfway through wiping down a console when the lights surged on. The hum thickened. A door slid open to her left. A man entered, tall. Black suit, silver tie. He moved with the quiet certainty of someone used to being obeyed. He didn't speak, but the air shifted the moment he arrived, like gravity had shifted with him. Damien Hales, CEO of Helix Tech. He didn't speak right away. His gaze moved over her with quiet calculation, not intrusive, just deeply observant. He wasn't used to being surprised, and Cassie Mendez, scrubbing his lab at 11 p.m., was very much a surprise. Then his voice cut through the stillness. "I had you scheduled for this shift." Cassie turned. Damien Hale stood half in shadow, hands in his pockets, shirt sleeves rolled to the elbow. The tie was gone, but his intensity had not dimmed. She blinked. "I wasn't told this was a request. I wanted to speak to you in private." Cassie kept her posture relaxed, but her mind sharpened. "About what?" "You," he said, "and what you were doing in my core interface yesterday." She crossed her arms. "Saving your launch." Damien walked closer, not threatening but deliberate. "You didn't just save it. You navigated. A recursive failsafe that no one on my senior team even recognized." "Lucky guess." "Bullshit," he said, calm but firm. Silence pulsed between them. Damien stepped to one of the side consoles and activated a secure terminal. He didn't turn to face her. "You know what the Atlas protocol is?" Cassie didn't answer. "You used it," he continued, "without tripping any alerts, which means you've either worked with Helix systems before or you've had access. No one knows about." She felt her heartbeat pick up. "You're accusing me of something?" "I'm asking why someone like you—" He turned now, fixing her with a piercing look. "A woman with no degree, no certifications, working night shifts for a third-party janitorial firm, is writing code like a systems architect." Cassie's jaw tightened. "Maybe because your system was about to implode and no one else was fixing it." "You speak clearly," he said. "Too clearly. You move like someone trained, not someone scraping by." "What is this?" she snapped. "An Interrogation. Damien didn't blink. Yes. Cassie took a step back, her arms folding tighter. Well then, let's save us both some time. I'm not a spy. I'm not a saboteur. I'm a woman who was good at something once, and then life happened. His expression didn't shift. Where did you go to school? Stanford, computer science. I dropped out in my 3rd year. Why? My mother got sick, my brother was diagnosed, my father died. Is it enough? Your age, 26. Married? No. Kids? She narrowed her eyes. Is this still relevant, or are you just trying to box me in? Damien's voice dropped slightly, but the edge remained. If someone like you slips past all our internal layers without being noticed, either we're incompetent or you're dangerous. I'm neither, she said. I'm just someone who noticed what your people didn't. He studied her for a long beat, then walked to the console and brought up a monitor displaying diagnostic logs from the night before. One line blinked. Red bias filter overflow. He didn't say anything, just watched her eyes as they scanned the line. Watched the way her pupils moved, how she tilted her head just slightly, then he shut the monitor off. I'll see you tomorrow, he said. At 10:30, at my office. Cassie hesitated. I haven't agreed to anything. You will, she held. His gaze, you don't know me. Damien stepped closer, just enough for his voice to land low. No, but I want to. She turned to leave. This time, she didn't say goodbye. Cassie poured lukewarm tea into a chipped ceramic mug, her fingers steady despite the restless thoughts in her head. The apartment was quiet, except for the low hum of the heater. In the next room, her brother Ethan, 14 and nonverbal, spun, his fidget ring in rhythmic circles. Her mother sat slouched on the couch, pale and tired, the tremor in her left hand more pronounced than the day before. MS was a thief. It stole slow and without warning. Cassie sat briefly, but her mind didn't. She hadn't been able to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Damien's expression again. Sharp, unreadable. She hated the way his voice echoed in her head. The smug calm. The effortless authority. She hated that she could still see the clean lines of his jaw, the glint in his eyes when he spoke like the world bent to him, and yet some part of her couldn't stop playing that moment over. The way he had looked at her, as if she was something unexpected, as if she didn't belong, but had somehow mattered. She had nearly decided not to go. Then the envelope arrived, a plain white slip with a hospital logo, 3,048 to 72s, her mother's monthly infusion, not covered by insurance. Cassie stood in the middle of the kitchen for a long minute, staring at the number. By 10:15, she was dressed and standing outside the entrance to Helix Tower. Black trousers, a tailored blazer, low-heeled boots. Her hair down, brushed sleek behind. Her shoulders, minimal makeup just enough to mask the shadows under her eyes. She didn't look like a janitor today. Damien was already in his office when she walked in at exactly 10:30. He looked up from the tablet in his hands, and for a moment, just a flicker, he faltered. Cassie Mendez didn't look like the woman who had been scrubbing his lab floors the night before. Her dark hair was loose, falling just past her shoulders in clean waves. A touch of makeup made her hazel eyes sharper, less guarded. She wore black trousers and a simple navy blazer over a fitted shirt. Nothing flashy, but composed, professional, and entirely hers, not a janitor, not anymore. Damien quickly masked the shift in his expression, setting the tablet aside. Sit. She did, slowly. The silence between them was immediate, taut like a tripwire. I wanted to offer you a position, he began. Cassie didn't blink. Doing what? Mopping smarter. His mouth twitched, but not into a smile. Project design, private division. Prototype level, small team. You'll report directly to me, same floor. Her brow arched. You're hiring your janitor? I'm hiring a mind, Damien said calmly, that hasn't crossed my desk in years. She tilted her head, skeptical. What are you going to tell your engineers? I don't run this company by committee. If I see value, I don't need permission to act on it. What they think is irrelevant. I suggest you adopt the same philosophy. He tapped the tablet again. A new screen lit up. Her university records. Aptitude tests, high school Olympiad medals. His voice lowered. You didn't mention your father worked here. Cassie's expression tightened. The timing didn't feel right. He died here. Yes. Jumped from the roof. 4 years ago. Cassie's jaw clenched. Everyone says it was personal, that he had issues. But I knew him. He didn't break like that. He was working on something, and I think it scared someone. Their eyes met, and for a breathless moment, neither looked away. Damien leaned back. His file says he was terminated for attempting to leak Helix code. You own this building. That termination came with your signature. I own Helix, he said, but I was in Zurich when it happened. The board acted quickly, maybe too quickly. There was a pause. You fixed the Atlas loop in 30 seconds, he said. How? Cassie's voice was quiet. My dad coded it. He worked on it at night. I used to watch from the couch while doing homework. He didn't know I was memorizing. Every command he typed. By 13, I could rewrite half of it in my sleep. Damien's jaw flexed. Then it's a miracle no one found you sooner. She looked away. They weren't looking. He nodded slowly. It bothers me that you never finished your degree. If you ever want to go back, I'll fund it. Quietly. Cassie exhaled. Mr. Hale, you're offering me access, and I need it. I won't pretend otherwise, but I don't trust people who speak like you do, so if this is about loyalty, don't hold your breath. Damien didn't blink. Good. I trust people more when they don't hand it over too easily. He stood, walked to his desk, picked up a small envelope and a keycard. Welcome to Helix. Her new workspace was small, clean, glass walls, positioned just outside Damien's office like an aquarium. She hated it. People passed by, slowing down to glance at her, whispering, smirking. She ignored it. She turned on her screen, logged in and began. Above her, behind the smoked glass wall, Damien Hale watched without saying a word. It had been a month since Cassie started working at Helix. Her desk was still that same glass-walled cube just outside Damien Hale's office, a fishbowl with a view. She hated the visibility, but she'd stopped complaining because the paycheck was good, more than good. It covered her brother's therapy, her mother's medication, and for the first time in years, they weren't behind on rent. She even had enough left over to fix the leaky window in the kitchen. But that wasn't why she stayed. Every spare hour she wasn't working on Damien's high-level behavioral modeling project, she was digging. Cassie had quietly mapped out a strategy. She never searched anything directly. Instead, she traced user activity logs, reviewed obsolete file directories, found test environments left unlocked by careless engineers, a comment string buried in debug history, a misfiled chat, archive, the kind of things no one noticed unless they were looking, and Cassie was looking. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't leave a trace. But the questions in her head never stopped repeating. Why did her father die here? What did he see? And who wanted it buried so badly they made it disappear? That evening she was packing up her bag when Damien stepped out of his office. Heading out? He asked casually. Cassie blinked. He hadn't spoken more than 5 words to her all week. Yes, she said cautiously. I'll drive you, she frowned. That's not necessary. I didn't ask, he said. Come on, we need to talk. He was already walking toward the elevator. The car was waiting outside, sleek, black, silent. A driver opened the back door. Cassie slid in beside Damien, stiff as stone. Where to? The driver asked. Cassie hesitated, then gave her neighborhood. North Side, Glenbrook Avenue. Damien nodded without looking at her. The partition slid up. The silence in the car stretched as they pulled into traffic. "You've been helping move the project forward," Damien said at last. "Your code reviews caught 2 failures before they deployed. The anomaly detection layer, that was you, right?" Cassie gave a small nod. "Just cleaned it up." "You did more than that." More silence. Rain tapped against the glass. "You've also been poking around places you weren't assigned to," he added. "Backlogs, chat histories, test servers." Cassie turned her head slowly to look at him. "You're monitoring my sessions?" "I monitor everything," he said, "and you're not subtle." She stared out the window again. "If you want me gone, say it." "I don't want you gone." "Then what do you want?" "I want to know what you're looking for." Cassie's jaw tightened. "Do you always interrogate your employees in the back of a car?" Damien's tone was steady. "Only the interesting ones." They rode in silence for a moment. "Your searches started 3 weeks ago," he said. "You didn't go after the obvious files. You weren't careless. That tells me you've done this before." She didn't answer. Damien leaned slightly closer. Not enough to touch, but enough that she could feel the shift in energy. "You're after something personal," he said. "It's written all over your patterns, and I think I know what." Cassie turned, eyes sharp. "Then say it." "Your father," Damien said simply. "You're trying to understand what happened to him." Her breath caught. "I get it," he said. "Believe it or not." "Do you?" she asked. "I think so. I've been following threads of my own. Things inside Helix don't add up. There are gaps in records, security flags that shouldn't be there, a few things I can't explain." She stared at him. Damien continued, "But I can't dig too deep without setting off alarms. You can. No one's watching you, except you. I'm not watching to stop you. I'm watching because I'm interested in what you'll find." Cassie was quiet. Then, "You could have fired me." "I still could." She gave a humorless laugh. "Comforting. I didn't bring you into this because of charity. I brought you in because you care. You want the truth." "So do I." Cassie shook her head. "Why me?" He looked at her. "Because no one in this company would ever suspect I'm working with you." He didn't say it with arrogance, just fact. "And because," he added, "you don't scare easy." They pulled up to her building. The driver waited. Cassie opened the door, then paused. "I'm not sure if you're the man who's going to help me," she said. "Or the one I should be running from." Damien met her eyes. "Maybe both." She stepped out into the night. As the car pulled away, she placed a hand on her bag where the old Helix keycard was tucked deep in the lining. She didn't know where this was going, but she knew one thing. She was closer than she'd ever been. Cassie sat at her desk, or more precisely, inside the transparent box Damien called a workstation. Every so often she'd glance up and see his silhouette behind the frosted glass of his office. Distant, still, watching. She tried not to let it get to her. This morning, though, something else caught her eye. Amelia. She moved through the floor like she owned it. Tall, polished, draped in a blazer so well-tailored it practically whispered the word power. Her hair was that deliberate kind of blonde, sharp at the ends, and she walked like every hallway was a runway. Cassie didn't know exactly why this woman unsettled her. But when she saw Amelia enter Damien's office and rest her hand lightly, on his arm as she leaned in to say something, Cassie frowned, feeling a sudden wave of annoyance. Damien barely reacted. His posture didn't change. Still, Cassie noticed the way he let her hand linger for a second longer than necessary, the way he looked. Tolerant. Cassie snapped her gaze back to her screen, and there it was. A flicker, a buried thread of metadata, commits, version logs, where none should exist, buried under one of the archived protocol trees, 2 names, Elias Mendez, Martin Keene. The logs weren't files, they were traces, shadows, but real. There was a version control entry that had been overridden, manually, and someone had tried to erase the evidence. Her heart kicked into a higher gear. She jumped to her feet and rushed into Damien's office. Emilia was still in the office. Cassie didn't care. She crossed the floor and waited at the door. Not a knock, just presence. Damien saw Cassie and noticed the flicker of irritation on her face the moment their eyes met. He turned to Emilia, smile polite. "I'll need a few minutes, something urgent." Emilia gave Cassie a sweet but clearly fake smile. Then, narrowing her eyes, she stared at her for a few seconds. "Wait a second. Damien, sweetheart, is this the cleaning girl or—" Before Damien could say a word, she stepped toward Cassie, closing the space between them. "Oh, honey, you're actually really pretty. You do know you've hit the jackpot, right?" Cassie bit the inside of her cheek, holding back a response. Damien stepped in. "Emilia, actually, it's Helix that's lucky. Cassie was just here on a temporary role, but she's one of those rare talents in software." Emilia turned to him with a bright, almost mocking laugh. "Oh, of course she is. I mean, why else would you keep her on this floor, right?" As she walked past, Cassie felt the perfume first. Then the eyes on her back. The door hissed shut. Cassie tried not to show how much she liked Damien's answer, keeping her expression composed and professional. "Mr. Hayes, I think I might have found something important." Damien lifted his hand, signaling her to come closer. Cassie stepped forward, voice low but steady. "Martin Keene, my father. There are ghost logs in the system, version control traces. Someone tried to scrub them." Damien's expression tightened. "You're sure?" She nodded. "The commits are tied to a defunct branch. It's locked. I can't access the content without an executive protocol key." He turned toward his desk, bracing his hands against the edge. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he said, almost to himself, "Martin and I go back years." Cassie said nothing. Damien straightened. "If I open that file under my credentials, it flags the audit system. Once it's flagged, it's no longer private. The board will demand to know what I accessed, and if I unlocked one sealed archive, they'll want the rest. I can't risk that. Not yet." "Then don't do it from here." He looked at her. "You have somewhere in mind?" "No," she folded her arms, "but we shouldn't be here." Damien paused for a moment. "We'll handle this off-site, Cassie. Let's go somewhere they can't follow us. You head out first. Meet me at the corner of the street. I'll be there in 10 minutes. The hotel was on the edge of the city. Business class, forgettable, the kind of place where privacy was part of the price. Cassie sat cross-legged on the chair near the desk, laptop open, code running. Her hair was pulled to one side of her neck, the sleeves of her white shirt rolled up, and she sat focused on the screen in front of her. Damien stood by the window, blazer off, shirt sleeves rolled up, fingers turning a pen between them. Cassie didn't look up. "You trust hotel Wi-Fi?" "I don't," he said. "That's why we're tunneling through a deprecated testing server I built during the core dev cycle. No one monitors it. No one remembers it exists." She glanced at him, mildly impressed. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by keyboard clicks. Then, "Emilia," Cassie said without looking up. "You and she were," Damien answered. "Not anymore." A faint smile tugged at Damien's lips. "That's kind of a personal question, don't you think, Cassie?" Cassie, normally sharp-tongued, found herself speechless for once. "You watching me?" asked Damien. "No," she said. "Just wondering how close your judgment is tied to your history." Damien gave a small smile. "It's not." Silence. Again, this time heavier. Then the laptop pinged. Cassie leaned forward. "We're in." The upload was slow, too slow. Cassie sat curled in the couch, knees drawn up beneath her, laptop balanced on the table before her. At some point her chin had dropped to her chest, and her breaths had grown soft, shallow, slow. One hand still rested near the keyboard, like she hadn't meant to fall asleep, but hadn't had the strength to resist. The hotel room was quiet, lit only by the dim glow of the screen and the muted spill of city light through the glass. Damien stood by the window. He wasn't looking at the skyline, he was watching her, not constantly, not openly, but with the occasional glance that lingered longer than it should have. Her hair had come loose and spilled over her shoulder, her features relaxed in sleep, all sharpness softened, vulnerable, unaware. Then the laptop pinged again. The progress bar vanished. A directory unfolded. Damien crossed the room, slow but focused. He leaned over the table, scanning the file names. Elias Final.mes glog. His throat tightened. He opened it. Encryption flashed. Then a burst of raw code. Then lines of conversation, partially decoded. A date. 2 days before Elias Mendez died. Damien stared at the screen. His eyes moved faster now, reading, scrolling, pausing once, twice. He froze, a single line fragmented, but damning. If this goes further, I'll take it to Hale myself. They can't bury this. He inhaled sharply, stepped back, looked at Cassie, still asleep. Her brow furrowed slightly, like even in rest, something inside her was bracing for pain. He reached for the blanket draped over the armrest, pulled it around her shoulders, tucked it under her elbow. His hand hovered near her face, then moved, gently to brush the strands of hair from her cheek, a touch so brief it could have been mistaken for hesitation. He stood still for a second, silent, watchful. Then he closed the laptop, tucked it under his arm, and walked out the door without looking back. The faint glow of the laptop had long since dimmed. Cassie stirred on the armchair, blankets slipping from her shoulders. Her neck ached, her body stiff from hours in the same curled position. She blinked at the unfamiliar room. Then she noticed the chair across from her was empty. The second laptop was gone. Her pulse quickened. "Mr. Hales," she called, voice groggy. "Again. Damien?" No response. She checked her phone. No messages. She called, straight to voicemail. The clock on the nightstand read 12:47 a.m. She sat upright, heart pounding now. The room was quiet, too quiet. She rushed to gather her bag, slipped on her shoes, and walked out into the narrow hotel hallway. By the time she stepped out into the street, the cold hit her hard. Her coat flapped open in the wind as she crossed to the corner, trying to figure out which direction to go. The streets were mostly empty. A few taxis, a distant siren. Then she heard it, a low, steady crunch of tires rolling slowly behind her. She threw a quick glance over her shoulder and caught sight of a black car creeping just a few paces back. Her pulse kicked up. She picked up her pace, boots clicking sharply against the rain-slick pavement as she turned abruptly onto a side street. But the car followed. Its engine purred like a shadow. Cassie didn't wait. She broke into a full run, heart pounding, breath catching in the back of her throat. She didn't look back, just sprinted, breath loud in her ears, lungs burning. Then, headlights too close. She veered off the sidewalk, trying to cut through an alley. But the car swerved with her, tires screeching. She stumbled, her boot catching the edge of the curb, and went down hard, her body slamming against the cold, unforgiving pavement. Before she could even catch her breath, the front bumper of the car grazed her side with brutal force, sending her crashing into a stack of metal trash bins. The impact rang out, metal clanged, glass shattered, something rolled away into the dark, and then sudden silence. The car was gone. Cassie lay, motionless, the world spinning slightly above her as she blinked up at the night sky, pain radiating through her ribs like fire. Someone screamed. A door opened. Footsteps approached. Darkness pulled at the edge of her vision as red and blue lights began to paint the alley walls. The antiseptic scent hit her before the light did. Cassie blinked slowly, the white hospital ceiling swimming into focus. Her head throbbed, her limbs were heavy, but she was awake. For a moment, she thought she was alone. Then she saw the figure. In the chair, slouched forward, elbows on his knees, shirt sleeves rolled up, his expensive jacket folded on the side table like it didn't matter. Damien. He hadn't noticed she'd stirred. His eyes were fixed on the floor, fists clenched, jaw tight. Rage simmered beneath the surface, but it wasn't loud. It was silent, focused. "You're here." Cassie's voice came out dry and weak. Damien's head snapped up. In a heartbeat, he was at her bedside. "Cassie, Christ, don't move," he said, his voice trembling slightly, laced with worry and unexpected tenderness. She tried to sit up. "I'm fine." "You're not." His voice cracked slightly. "You were hit by a car, concussion, bruised ribs. You're lucky." Cassie winced as she shifted. "Where did you go?" He froze. "I woke up and you were gone." "You didn't. Answer your phone. I had no idea what happened, and then a car tried to run me down in the middle of the night." Her breath hitched. "What were you doing?" Damien looked at her for a long moment, then pulled the chair closer and sat. "I saw something in that file. Something I didn't want you to see. Not because I don't trust you, but because it puts you in more danger than you realize." "Then, why leave me alone in that room?" Her voice was low now, tired, angry. "I thought you'd be safe. I didn't think they'd move that fast." He dragged a hand down his face. "That was my mistake. And it almost got you killed." He leaned forward, resting his arms on the edge of the bed, eyes searching hers. "I've made a lot of decisions in my life that I've had to live with. But this, leaving you there, that's the first one I regret this deeply." Cassie didn't respond. Not at first. Then quietly, "You saw something about my father." Damien hesitated. "Yes, but it's bigger than that. And if we're going to get to the bottom of it, we have to be smarter. We can't make mistakes like last night again." She nodded slowly. Then he did something she didn't expect. He reached out, gently took her hand in his. "I'm not just going to help you finish this. I'm going to protect you while we do." Cassie stared at their hands, hers small and scratched, his warm, steady. For the first time in years, she felt like maybe she wasn't in this alone. Cassie never made it back to her apartment that night. 3 cracked ribs, a mild concussion, and 26 stitches later, Cassie Mendez found herself standing in the middle of Damien Hale's living room, or rather, the sleek, 2-level penthouse, at the top of a glass and steel fortress overlooking the skyline. She hadn't agreed easily, he insisted. "Just a few days," Damien had said, "until we know you're safe." Cassie had wanted to argue. Her pride screamed against the offer, but her body still ached, and the memory of that black car still made her stomach twist. So she nodded. Once. The apartment was cold in a curated way. All steel lines, slate floors, dark wood. Nothing soft, nothing personal. Except maybe the bookshelf near the window, rows of annotated technical journals, and, oddly, a weathered copy of The Little Prince. Cassie raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. "I leave for Helix by 7, Damien said that first morning. "Stay here. Work. Use anything you need." She did. By the 3rd day, Cassie had mapped enough of the system to know where the blind spots were. Not in security, Helix was nearly airtight, but in accountability, especially around something labeled Project Borealis. She accessed it through a buried set of backup logs, pretending to be tracing error reports. The name had appeared twice before, once in Elias Mendez's internal access history, and once in a flagged commit override by Martin Keene. The deeper she looked, the more the pattern emerged. Elias had submitted multiple warnings about the protocol's instability. Martin had overridden everyone. And right after the final override, Elias had been terminated, not fired, eliminated. Cassie stared at the timestamps. The last modification Martin made had been 2 days before her father's fall from the roof. Why? She kept digging. That's when she found the metadata trail. Logs of unauthorized exports routed through a masked node. The recipient was listed, as MT Secure Holdings Mendoza Technologies. It was a rival firm, smaller but aggressive, known for swooping in on half-finished patents and scaling them to market before their competitors even saw it coming. If Borealis had been leaked, if Elias had tried to stop it, she sat back, stomach hollow. Martin hadn't just silenced her father, he'd profited from it. When Damien returned that night, Cassie was still at the terminal. He dropped his keys in the tray, loosened his collar, and walked over. "You haven't moved." "I found something," Cassie said, turning. Her voice was tight. I think your board has a leak, and I think it goes back to Martin." Damien went still. Cassie laid it out. The logs, the overrides, the export trail. Damien didn't speak for a long time. Then, quietly, "He was always good at politics. I never thought to watch him for theft." Cassie watched his jaw tighten. Something behind his eyes darkened. "What was Project Borealis?" she asked. "A predictive neural framework, self-learning AI that could anticipate user behavior, market behavior, security threats. Militaries wanted it. Governments offered billions." He paused. "And Elias was the only one who saw the flaw, the ethical flaw," Cassie whispered. "So Martin leaked it to Mendoza and let Elias take the fall." They both sat in silence. Finally, Damien said, "There might still be archived correspondence. Personal. Logs, encrypted backups, but they're sealed. Executive only. If I access them, it leaves a trace the board can see." Cassie looked at him. "But if we do it from outside?" Damien nodded slowly. "Then maybe no one will ever know." That night, they left through the service exit. No cars, no security tags, just 2 laptops and burner hotspots. Damien booked the hotel, under a fake name. The room was stark, quiet, anonymous. They sat side by side, shoulder to shoulder, as the terminal loaded, waiting, watching, and the final truth slowly began to rise. The screen still flickered with decrypted fragments. Elias's name, Martin's ID, time-stamped entries Cassie hadn't had the strength to read yet. But for now, everything was still. Damien moved away from the desk and lowered himself into the chair beside her, not saying anything at first. The hotel room was dim, quiet, the hum of the city barely reaching the window. Cassie glanced sideways, startled by how tired he looked. Jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled, the tension sitting heavier on his shoulders than usual. "I should have known," he said, voice low. She blinked. "What?" He met her gaze. "I was out of the country when your father died." "That's true. But I still owned Helix. I should have followed up. I should have asked questions, should have noticed the inconsistencies. I didn't, and because I didn't, you lost him." Cassie's lips parted slightly, but she couldn't find words. Damien kept speaking, his tone steady, but something cracked just underneath it. "This happened in my company, under my name. And it shouldn't have. I'm sorry, Cassie." She didn't move, but her eyes shimmered. He glanced at the screen, then back at her. "You walked into my building as a cleaning contractor. Maybe that was instinct. Maybe it was chance. But either way, I'm glad you did. It gave me the chance to see what I missed, to fix what I ignored." A silence opened between them, but not the heavy kind. This one was softer, filled with everything unsaid but understood. "You're brilliant," Damien said quietly. "Resourceful, unafraid, and—" he hesitated just slightly. "You're beautiful. I know this isn't the place for sentiment, but I'm glad you're here. With me—" Cassie turned away, eyes full, voice tight. "That was meaningful, Mr. Hales." He smiled faintly. "You can call me Damien." Cassie let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "That might take some practice. You don't exactly give off a just call me Damien kind of energy." Damien's smile curved deeper, and then, before she could say anything else, he leaned in, slowly, carefully. His Hand brushed against her jaw, not forceful, just a question written in touch. His eyes searched hers. "Is this okay?" he murmured. Cassie didn't answer with words. She froze, breath caught, but didn't pull away. Damien kissed her, softly. A brush more than anything, gentle, testing, real. He leaned back an inch, eyes steady. "How's that for a vibe?" Cassie stared at him, heart loud in her chest, then smiled just a little. "I think I can call you Damien now." Cassie hadn't fully shaken off the shock of what had just happened. Damien Hayes had just complimented her and kissed her. Now he was back to studying the screen, eyes scanning through lines of code, completely focused, and yet Cassie found herself watching him instead. He really was a striking man, reserved, the kind of man who made you think twice before speaking, those deep brown eyes that held more than they revealed. The way he kept brushing his hair back, a few stubborn strands streaked with the first grays of 38, sitting just at his temples, giving him a kind of quiet gravity, a man who carried weight, who took responsibility, who stood his ground, and suddenly Cassie found herself wondering what would happen to him when all of this came to light. Would he get hurt? In all their efforts to take Martin down, she'd never once stopped to think about what Damien might lose. But he had. He'd thought about her, about the company. Not once had he seemed concerned about what might happen to himself. "Damien," she said softly, barely above a whisper. He turned to her, that warm smile lighting up his face, like it belonged only to her. "When we expose everything, if we manage to bring Martin down, you do realize this could come back on you, right?" A faint, almost sad smile touched Damien's lips, and he looked at her with a depth that made something inside her ache. "Sometimes there are things in life bigger than ourselves, Cassie," he said. "If I turn a blind eye to this, I won't be able to live with myself. If there's a price to pay, I'll pay it." This time, Cassie didn't hold back. She leaned in and kissed him. Not gently, but with the kind of passion that left no room for hesitation. And Damien kissed her back just as fiercely. Breathless, she whispered against his lips, "I don't want anything bad to happen to you." Her trembling hands cupped his face. "Don't think about that now," Damien said, voice low and steady. "When this is over and when you're safe, we'll leave this behind. Somehow we'll both be okay." The room had gone still. The only sound was the quiet hum of the laptop, its screen casting a pale glow over their faces as they waited, shoulders tense, breath shallow. Outside, the city lights flickered against the window, a blurred mosaic of movement and meaning. Inside, the terminal blinked once, then twice before a single file appeared. Elias, final Demeslog timestamp. 4 years ago, 2 days before Elias Mendez died. Cassie didn't speak. Her fingers moved slowly, deliberately. As she opened the file, Damien leaned closer, but not too close. It felt like opening a door that had long been bricked over, a door neither of them had ever meant to find. The screen adjusted. A face appeared. Elias. He sat in a dimly lit room, the camera angled slightly downward, a mug resting by his elbow. The light cut across the worry lines on his face. His fingers were laced together, knuckles white. He looked into the lens, and somehow, across time. "If you're watching this, it means I couldn't stop it." Cassie gripped the edge of the desk. Damien's eyes didn't move from the screen. "I thought loyalty would count for something, that doing the right thing would be enough. But Martin Keene, is selling us out." A slight shake in Elias's voice, quickly swallowed. "He's redirecting the behavioral mapping data into a dummy shell company, Mendoza Technologies. It's not a research partnership. It's a backdoor. The neural scaffolding we've spent years building is being stripped, anonymized, and fed into military use contracts. Predictive threat analysis, civilian suppression." The room felt colder. Elias looked down. He rubbed his temples with both. hands, then lifted his head again, slower this time. They told me I was overreacting, that I was too close to the project, that I needed time off. And now today, they pulled my clearance. My access card failed. Files I wrote, gone. He exhaled. Cassie, I hope you never see this, but if you do, don't stop. They'll try to erase me. Don't let them. You're the smartest person I've ever known. You see patterns where others see chaos. Trust that. Trust yourself. A pause. And, tell your mother I... The screen went black. Abrupt. No fade, just silence. Cassie didn't move. She stared at the screen as if it might blink back to life, as if the silence might crack open and return her father's voice. But nothing came. Just that still image burned behind her eyes. His face, that last unfinished sentence. Damien remained seated beside her. But something in him had shifted. His shoulders no longer sat tall. One hand had balled into a slow, deliberate fist against his knee. Neither spoke. Cassie wiped at her cheek without realizing it, not because she wanted to cry, but because the weight of it, of having been right, and still having lost him, was too much to carry. Dry-eyed, minutes passed, maybe more. She finally said without looking at Damien, "He didn't fall." Damien nodded once. The motion was heavy, filled with something close to guilt. He opened his mouth, then closed it, and in the quiet the truth settled around them like dust. Damien hadn't slept. By the time the sun lifted over the city, washing the skyline in dull gold, he was already dressed, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his apartment, eyes locked on nothing in particular. Below, the streets pulsed, with the rhythm of a normal Monday, but today would not be normal. Cassie was still asleep in the guest room. After what happened, after the hit and run, the hospital, the fractured calm of her voice when she asked if he was hiding something, he hadn't let her out of his sight. But now, with the truth almost in reach, he had to move. By 7:15, he was on a secured line with Helix's internal legal counsel, not the one the board used, the one only he used, retained years ago for contingencies just like this. A quiet, incisive man named Roth. Roth didn't ask why. He just listened, and when Damien finished outlining what they had, digital logs, video testimony, and a buried voice file, Roth's response was calm. "We need a chain of custody, backups, witnessing, and a contingency release in case you or Ms. Mendez disappear." By 8 a.m., 2 encrypted SSDs had been cloned. One delivered to Roth's office, one placed in a private deposit box under Roth's name, with a release clause. If neither Damien nor Cassie checked in within 48 hours, the contents would go public, to media, regulators, and Helix's other stakeholders. Damien handled the rest alone. He logged into a private Helix node, bypassing all board-visible channels. The files were time-locked, accessible only through biometric match and multi-phase encryption. He didn't need to trust anyone else, just the logic of the system he'd helped build. Then came the final move. He scheduled an emergency board meeting. The official reason, anomalies detected in Project Borealis archive logs. The actual reason, he was going to give Martin Keene the chance to walk straight into his own trap. Cassie woke to the faint echo of Damien's voice through the apartment's intercom. She didn't ask where he'd gone. She knew. What they had uncovered in that hotel room the night before had left no room for delay. When he returned in the afternoon, his shirt sleeves were rolled to the elbow, jaw shadowed by a day's worth of tension. "It's done," he said. "Tomorrow at 9, the board convenes." Cassie stood, clutching the hard drive she'd been working from all morning. "What do you need me to do?" Damien's eyes held hers. "Nothing, not yet. I need you safe, off-grid. If Martin catches the scent of you in that meeting, he'll know, and if he knows, he runs." Cassie opened her mouth, but he held up a hand. "You've done enough. Tomorrow, we end it." And in that moment, the space between them felt taut, with something bigger than either of them. Not trust, not yet, but understanding, respect, and something else, something unfinished. The conference room at Helix was unusually still. No buzz of monitors, no whispers, just silence, thick, expectant. Every executive seat was filled, yet no one spoke. A single screen dominated the front wall, waiting to come alive. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city gleamed in brittle winter light. Cassie stood near the back beside Damien, fingers locked in front of her. The tension wasn't just professional, it was personal, carved into bone. Her father's name had never been spoken in this room, but it would be now. Damien stepped forward. No suit today, just a black shirt, sleeves rolled up, his watch catching the light. He addressed the room. We have an obligation, not just to our shareholders or to our future clients, but to the truth. 4 years ago, Elias Mendez discovered something that compromised everything this company stood for. He tried to stop it. He was silenced, and that silence ends today. He looked to Cassie. She gave a single nod. Damien tapped a key. The screen flickered to life. The voice was tinny at first, distorted, then clearer. My name is Elias Mendez. I was the lead systems engineer on Project Borealis. Gasps broke in the room. I leave this message in case something happens to me. I found proof that data from Borealis is being redirected, secretly, illegally, to Mendoza Technologies. This isn't just corporate theft. This protocol is being re-engineered for military adaptation without oversight. And I believe Martin Keene is behind it, the audio hissed. Then silence. The room erupted. Some stood, others demanded explanations. But Damien was already moving. Martin Keene has been detained. Federal authorities are in possession of the raw data, along with a complete forensic breakdown of the breach. This company is cooperating fully. A beat. Then he added more quietly, we will rebuild, without shadows. Hours later, the building was quieter. Cassie walked through the glass corridor toward Damien's office. Her badge had a new designation, External Security Advisor. She entered without knocking. He stood by the window, tie loosened, the city behind him bathed in dusk. Cassie stepped beside him. It's done. Damien didn't turn. No, it's only just beginning. She looked at him. How are you? His eyes met hers, tired but lit with something new. Resolve, maybe even peace. I keep thinking about your father. About all the signs I missed. Cassie shook her head. You were overseas. You trusted the wrong people. That doesn't make you guilty. Damien's voice dropped. But it makes me responsible. Cassie looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped closer. We can't change the past, Damien, but we get to choose what we do next. He reached for her hand, fingers threading between hers. And I choose this, he said. She smiled, soft, earnest. Then let's make it count. The two stood together, high above the city that had once buried a secret. Now, in the quiet after the storm, it was finally time to begin again. The Helix Tower shimmered in the morning light, sleek glass and quiet power rising against the skyline. Cassie paused outside the tall revolving doors, letting the crisp wind brush her face. No longer wearing a janitor's badge, she now carried something far heavier, a name, a legacy, a future. She stepped inside. The marble lobby was just as she remembered. Cool, spotless, humming with efficiency. But the way people looked at her had shifted. There were no sidelong glances. No one hurried past. Instead, they nodded, stood a little taller. Her gaze lifted briefly to the ceiling's angular glasswork, and for a second she was back in that oversized cleaning uniform, just a girl trying to exist in a world that had erased her father. Good morning, Mrs. Hales. The receptionist greeted with a polite smile. Cassie nodded and passed through the turnstiles, no longer beeping at her presence. At the elevator, a young developer held the door open. Executive floor? Yes, she replied. as the elevator. "Rose?" She caught her reflection in the chrome walls, soft blouse, tailored slacks, a gold band on her finger. Her free hand grazed the small curve beneath her ribs, and she smiled. When the doors opened, the hush of the executive floor welcomed her, but it no longer made her feel small. Colleagues greeted her with genuine warmth. "Morning, Mrs. Hales." At the end of the hall, sunlight spilled across the glass panel bearing her name. Cassandra M. Hales, Director, Helix Security Systems. Her office was calm, modern, and uncluttered. 2 monitors blinked with notifications, but before she could even sit, her phone buzzed. A video call. "Damien." She answered with a smile. "Hey." He looked tired, but satisfied, dressed in a dark suit, Tokyo's skyline stretching behind him. "Hey, beautiful. How are you feeling?" Cassie touched her belly. "He hasn't stopped kicking. I think he misses you." "I'll be home tomorrow," Damien said. "The Japanese team's blown away. They said the Mendez grid is 5 years ahead of anything on the market." She raised a brow. "And you're pitching it in flawless Japanese." "Xiao's doing all the real work. I just smile and nod like I know what I'm doing." Cassie laughed, settling into her chair. "They're going to want integration across the region." "They already asked. I told them you'd run the demo." "Of course," she grinned. "Nothing seals a deal like a pregnant co-founder." Damien's voice softened. "I miss you, both of you." She held his gaze. "We miss you too. Come home soon." "I will." The call ended. Cassie turned her chair toward the window, taking in the city that had once felt so far out of reach. Now it belonged to her. Below, the Mendez security grid operated quietly across thousands of networks, built from the same pain that had once nearly broken her. Now, it was her strength, her legacy. Justice hadn't come easily, but it had come. And this time, it carried her name. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the weight of it settle, the executive floor. This time, not as a janitor, not as an outsider, but as a Hales, as a Mendez, and most of all, as a woman who had reclaimed her future and made it her own. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you even for a moment, let us know. Tell us where in the world you're watching from in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And if you'd like to see more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who believes in quiet strength and truth revealed. See you in the next one.